Welcome to Enlightenment with Julian Nicholas, your gateway to a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. In each episode, Julian delves into the essence of wisdom and self-esteem, offering insights and messages to inspire your growth. Now, here's your host, Julian Nicholas, to guide you on this transformative journey towards living your best life.
Hello there. I'm very excited for today's episode. If you are a new listener, it's a pleasure to meet you. But if you are a returning listener, welcome back. I'd like to announce that I have a TikTok, Instagram, and a YouTube page where you can find everything related to Enlightenment. The Instagram and TikTok pages will be the places where you can see both highlights from the episodes as well as any announcements, like a new episode being dropped. As for YouTube, it'll also post highlights from the episode, but it will also be the place where you can find full episodes from the podcast in case if you don't have Spotify or Apple Podcasts. The YouTube channel has the same name as this podcast, as Enlightenment with Julian Nicholas. The Instagram is at Enlightenment_pod, and the TikTok is at the.enlightenment7. However, all of these can be found in the link down below. Without any further delays, in today's episode, I will be telling you about the fear of failure and disappointment. I'm sure we all know what the words failure, fear, and disappointment mean. However, if you are not aware of what any of those words mean, here is a mixture of both a brief summary of what they mean and what I think they mean. Fear is the feeling, thought, or sense of being afraid, frightful, or worried based on something bad possibly happening, whether something dangerous or something that's just unpleasant. Disappointment is the feeling or sense of being unsatisfied or feeling unfulfilled. This normally stems from having high hopes or expectations for something that didn't work out. As for failure, it's simply you or me being deprived of success. Now, if we put all of these together, it gives us the most common fear known to the human mind and conscious. That is the fear of failure. The fear of failure is very persistent in the mind. What also comes with fear is always the result when we don't succeed in something. Disappointment. Disappointment comes in two major forms, in my opinion. Disappointment with self and disappointment with others. However, in this case, we will be mainly discussing about the latter half, disappointment with self. Now, with disappointment in self, that can be broken down even further, but we can save that for another episode. In fact, for now, let's hold off talking about disappointment with self, and we can circle back later on in the episode. It is important that we explain why people may fear the act of failing, let alone the idea or even the concept of failing. You see, the fear of failure can come from various things. However, I believe that the major reasons why people often fear failure can stem from these 3 points. First, we could be anxious. We may feel nervous or downright afraid to even try something new or do something different for that matter. We are so consumed with anxiety. It prevents us from wanting to do those things that are new or foreign to us. This might be due to the fact that it might make us feel uncomfortable or make us feel embarrassed. With those feelings, we often are driven to avoid doing those things that we want to tackle or even achieve. Another crucial point we need to take into account is the fact that we may fear failure or become afraid to do something that may not live up to the expectations we as people set for ourselves. We also hate to let others down. Those are called our motivations, such as our family, for example. Or we're afraid to have that setback ruin our self-esteem. Now, let's dissect this point a little further. As already mentioned, we as people set some sort of expectation for ourselves, especially when it comes down to getting a goal achieved or trying something. For example, let's say you want to achieve this goal, a goal that means so much to you, and you are determined to get that achieved. When you finally start working on your goal or eventually get the goal done, sometimes it wasn't what you initially expected. Instead of succeeding and easily attaining your goal, you either are facing difficulties in your attempts to attain your goal, or the goal is becoming a debacle and you've failed. With this hardship or setback, it makes you wary of trying again or even trying something new. That fear of failure kind of paralyzes you from doing anything that's bold or daring. It covers you with a sense of regret for even putting yourself out there and trying. With that past regret from your previous failure, it may deter you from becoming involved in anything because you feel like that amount of failure will reappear once you attempt to do the task again or do another great mission you had in mind. Instead of running towards your goals, you're running away from the goals because of fear, the fear of failure. When it comes to self-esteem, we are fearful of the idea that when we dare ourselves to do something, the failure that may come from it could sour or even damage our self-esteem. We become worried that not only failure will subvert our self-expectations, but also our self-confidence. Let's say you have a project or a test that you want to pass and succeed, to do well. You feel pretty bold and confident in acing it. You claim that you've practiced and studied beforehand. But after you take the test or you present your project, you get your final results. You've failed the test. You failed your project. People are saying that the project was mediocre. What happened? Where's all that confidence now? You thought you were doing so well on this task. You put all your time into this. But this also ties into your expectations because you expected so highly of yourself that you were going to do well. You had so much confidence in yourself that you would meet your expected goal, only to fall short. This could shatter all the confidence and lower your self-esteem. Or maybe you already had a poor self-esteem or a poor mindset. Maybe you feel less about yourself because of your failures and your flaws. With that defeatist mentality, it makes you think, what is the point of even trying if I'm going to fail again? That I'm only going to embarrass myself again. It makes you hesitant to even participate in either doing something or establishing a goal for yourself and wanting to achieve that goal. As for letting down our motivations, this really means the people who motivate us to do something or to go further with not just our goals, but our lives. Whether this consists of family or friends, maybe a teacher or a person that may have inspired you. We are so uncomfortable and even afraid of the idea of letting that person down that's always been our major advocate for what we do. In a way, we see it as if we owe it to them, and to fail is to upset them, to make them feel disappointed in us. Another way is that maybe those motivators aren't the best motivators. What I mean by this is the idea that instead of self-expectations that you may have, they have expectations for you to complete and fulfill. Now, at times, there are reasonable expectations that they may give you, especially if it's a family member like your parents or someone like a teacher. Things like being respectful or to work hard in life are key examples. And those are good expectations. Those are positive and reasonable expectations where they may influence you to do positive things and to live up to those expectations. But people can impose negative expectations. For example, we may have a parent or someone we know who wants us to not try our best, but to perform at your best, where they expect you to do well and to succeed. This feeling of being pressured to do well and to live up to either negative self or external expectations as perfect as you can or how others want it can be deemed as perfectionism, which brings us to our final point. With perfectionism, it's where you not just want to achieve a goal and meet those expectations, but you have to be perfect in those attempts. Those mistakes are not allowed, and you can't make any flaws whatsoever. Otherwise, it will jeopardize everything you've worked so hard for. That time and effort that you put in to attain not only just your goals, but your desires. With being a perfectionist, you are so focused and driven on attaining your goal and achieving it, making sure that you are doing everything right to get to where you want to be. You begin to stress yourself out because you are so fervent in this idea that the only way you can achieve this goal and to become a success is through being perfect, to be flawless. It's almost like OCD for you. You're so overly compulsive about being perfect, it controls you in everything that you do with a careful and watchful eye. It practically dictates and commands your life. And when you don't reach those expectations, you begin to lower your self-esteem and self-deprecate or go against yourself. You begin to think that you're just a failure, that you're just worthless and a disappointment in whatever you do. That is what perfectionism does to you. It not only drives you crazy and stresses you out, but it makes you believe that you are not good enough. It makes you believe that no matter how many times you try, you will just fail again and again and again. And there is no point in trying anymore. You just infect yourself with this negative dogma, and you use that to keep yourself down and dormant, to not take any action and put yourself out there in this harsh world. Perfectionism is not just implanted within you, but embedded into you. It comes from external forces, and that becomes an internal one. Like I mentioned before, people like your family can make you feel this way. Whether they know it or not, it can make you feel insecure and make you feel less than. That you have to attain that level of perfection to appease not just yourself, but them. Before I continue, I want to make it clear that you are worthy and that you matter, that you are a hardworking person. No matter what others may say or think, you are enough and that you put in a lot of effort. Whether you're successful in that endeavor or not, it's not just appreciated, but also valued. You are not a disappointment. You are not a failure. You are, as my own mother would always say to me, perfectly imperfect, my friend, with your flaws and all. In fact, let me tell you something about me, a story, if you will. You see, I am a perfectionist. I always hold myself to high standards and expectations. I always strive to not just do my best, but to be the best, to perform the best, to outperform others even. However, it is because of my family not because they pressure me to be the best, but because they're my motivation. They are the reasons why I keep going whenever I want to pursue a goal. In a way, they're the reasons why I breathe. Seeing them not just proud but happy means a lot to me, honestly. To me, it makes me feel like I'm doing something right and I need to keep doing whatever I'm doing. But sometimes what this does is put not just stress, but pressure to maintain that. Not just for myself, but for them. To maintain that level of success for my mother, for my father, for my sisters, for all of them. Getting them to be happy or getting their approval gives me not just that hit of dopamine, but also that feeling of validation. There are even times in my own life where I felt that the achievements I've made, big or small, weren't good enough. This mentality, this defeatist and perfectionist mentality, not only drove me insane, but drove my mental health down the gutter. It just made me believe that no matter what type of success comes in my way, in my eyes, it's not good enough. In the eyes of my family, it's never good enough. Even though that's not true. That it's the complete opposite. If anything, they are proud of my success and my accomplishments, and they wouldn't want it any other way. Nor would they want me to think any other way that isn't ignoring or diminishing or even downplaying my success, my achievements. If anything, the only thing they will want me to change is the fact that I need to make myself proud first before I make them proud or anyone proud. After all, seeing myself happy should be my main priority. And even though I still put them as my top motivators, I have been trying to consider myself first and see whether I'm happy with myself and my success, or if I'm pleased with the effort I put in my work. If I'm not happy with the effort I put in, that doesn't mean I'm a failure or I'm worthless. It only means I can keep trying and actually give it my all, my 100%, or I use my failure to really look at where I stumbled so it can be the steps for me to improve myself, to better myself, to grow and to flourish as a person. Because let me ask you this, without the mistakes you've made throughout your entire life, how can you really become that better version of yourself? How can you really meet that better version of yourself without making the mistakes you've made? One may ponder or even ask, how can I stop feeling like a failure? How do I abolish this defeatist or perfectionist mentality? How can I avoid things like failure and disappointment? Well, thankfully, you have me to not only answer those questions for you, but to provide you the solution. When it comes to stopping this defeatist or perfectionist mentality, what you should do is give yourself some positive affirmations. Why not tell yourself, I think I did a good job, or I am enough. I tried my best. I'm not a failure. With positive affirmations, it can not only minimize, but even expel all those crippling thoughts of defeatism and perfectionism, where you can feel like you are enough and indulge yourself in not just positive thinking, but self-satisfaction, where you can look at yourself and admire not just the success, but the hard work that got you there, that got you to be successful. Another thing you should do is also acknowledge your other successes. We always prioritize on our failures and shortcomings in such a negative aspect, we tend to forget or even dismiss the other achievements we've made. Sometimes it's good to say, yeah, I didn't do well on this, but I did fantastic on this. Maybe next time I can do better. This actually brings us to the solution to how to stop feeling like a failure. When we look at an event or an action that we did and really give it some thought, it is a process I like to call reflective analyzing. It is where we analyze that event and we really reflect in both a negative and a critical way. Not in a negative way, but a healthy, critical way, to where we can critique ourselves to see where you excelled at, while also admitting that in some aspects, you could have done something better. You could have done something different, perhaps. So that way, when the future eventually rolls around, you can always prepare and equip yourself with the lessons you've gave yourself for when that time comes. Now, when it comes to avoiding failure and disappointment, I do have to tell you that those things are unavoidable. You see, my friend, we will always face some level of a setback or a stumble. We will always feel that sense of displeasure or discontent within ourselves. And in all honesty, we should somewhat embrace that. Let me explain. When I say embrace failure or embrace disappointment, I don't really mean in a negative light. After all, that will contradict not just what I said and the message I'm trying to give you, but contradict this entire episode and its purpose. When I say embrace it, embracing failure and disappointment, I mean accept the fact that we shouldn't run away from the feelings of disappointment or failure. For disappointment, sometimes we need hardships and that disappointment to bring us closer to those colorful joys in life. On top of that, we shouldn't run away and hide from failure, especially when that failure was unintentional. Because when we run away from failure, we are running away from an opportunity to grow and better educate ourselves on how things could have come out better, how we could have changed things. That actually brings us to the quote of this episode, actually. It's sponsored by yours truly. You see, whenever I see or listen to people who are upset because of their flaws or their failures, that they're disappointed in themselves, I always try to tell them, when people tell you to take the L, they normally would mean it as to take the loss because you failed. Instead of taking the L as a loss, take it as a learning experience. Because when we take things as a loss, we don't grow from the experience. We become stagnant. But when we take it as a learning moment, we allow ourselves the ability to grow and to become educated for not just the future ahead, but for ourselves now. This means that we can always become a better version of ourselves if we really take the time to learn from our flaws, rather than sit there and take nothing from the defeat or misstep, but that pitiful resentment. Well, my friend, you have reached the end of this lovely discussion. To ensure that you are in the right headspace and to continue to follow the path of progress, to better equip yourself with the sage wisdom to help guide you on your journey we call life. If you wish to continue our weekly talks on how to become a better version of yourself, my suggestion is to press the follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening to this fine podcast. If you feel like someone could be in need to hear these words, to stir them into the path of progress, and to feel empowered, informed, and inspired, why not share this podcast and its teachings to them? Until next time on your journey, my friend, keep the candle burning.
Thank you for listening to Enlightenment with Julian Nicholas. We hope today's episode has sparked new insights and empowered you on your path to personal growth. For more inspiration and wisdom, be sure to subscribe and follow. Connect with Julian on Instagram at enlightenment_pod. And if you found value in the show, please tell someone else. Join Julian next time as he continues his journey towards enlightenment. Until then, Remember to embrace your journey and live your best life.